The first match of the Bledisloe Cup and round number 5 of the Rugby Championship taking place this weekend. The All Blacks versus the Wallabies at Eden Park. Now at this current moment, the streak at Eden Park is still alive, but Australia playing some great rugby throughout this Rugby Championship. They would love nothing more than to end it and work their way a little bit closer to a Rugby Championship title. But there have been a lot of questions throughout this week in regards to selection. What will we see from Scott Robertson this weekend? And in this video, that is not what I'm going to be doing. Instead, I am selecting what I would like to see up against the Australians. I do think this is an extremely important game for the All Blacks to win. And I do think with the selection that I've gone with here, they would go a long way towards doing just that. But jumping into the front row, number 1, Ethan de Groot. Number 2, the return of Cody Taylor after his concussion. And number 3, Tyrell Lomax. It is what we saw throughout last year. It was effective for New Zealand, strong up front. And the absence of no Cody Taylor was certainly felt last week up against the South Africans. Now, I do think that Samisoni Taukei'aho in the first half did extremely well, but it just seemed to be those lack of minutes for Brodie McAllister that really hurt the Kiwis later on in the game. So having that experience of Cody Taylor alongside de Groot and Lomax, I think could be a very strong front row for the All Blacks. Up against Australia in the locking duo, this is where I have got a switch compared to what we saw up against South Africa. Number 4, Scott Barrett, so the captain keeping his spot, and number 5, Fabian Holland. Now, Holland off the bench, don't get me wrong, it's a great option. But I do think the impact that he had up against France when he was starting those matches was a lot more than we saw off the bench. So I do think that Fabian Holland, if the All Blacks want a great chance of that stability at line out, this is the perfect duo to select for the All Blacks. Moving on to the loose forward trio, I have made a little bit of a switch here. Number 6, Tupavai, so he is going back into the loose forward trio for myself heading into this matchup. I didn't mind him in the locking duo, but up against Australia, I just like Holland in that starting pack. So Tupavai back to 6, number 7, Ardie Savea, and then number 8, this is actually where I'd select Simon Parker. Now, he did play number 6 up against South Africa and did extremely well. And Wallace Satiti hasn't really done much wrong either. I just really like the idea of having quite a bit of impact off the bench later on in the game. Definitely because when we saw Australia up against not just South Africa, but also mainly Argentina, later on in the contest, that is where Australia have been so dangerous when it comes to scoring those tries and either coming back to win a game or getting extremely close to winning a game in the final moments, whereas the All Blacks throughout their Rugby Championship in that final 20-minute period, that is where they are susceptible to conceding tries. So that's where you need someone like a Wallace Satiti off the bench, fresh and ready to hit those breakdowns, make those tackles. So Satiti, he's off my bench. Simon Parker as the starting 8. Moving on to the backline. This is where New Zealand, there is some great news and they've got some injury returns in this 9 jersey. Number 9 straight away, chucking him back in, I would go with Cam Roigard. He did play in the NPC over the weekend. They did maybe rush Noah Hotham back a little bit, so hopefully that wouldn't be the same with Cam Roigard, but the absence that has been felt when that man is not out on the field has been very evidential throughout this Rugby Championship so far. Don't get me wrong, Finlay Christie, he did a decent job filling in that role. Missing Cortez Ratama as well, though, for New Zealand has made it extremely difficult to find that chemistry across the back line. So Cam Roigard, number 9, and controversially, in the number 10 jersey, I would actually still go with Beauden Barrett. Now, I know after that match up against South Africa in Wellington, people are taking Beauden out of their starting side. Now, McKenzie did start at number 15. Some people aren't completely sold on him either, so it's a bit of a tricky one at the moment in that number 10 jersey, but I do actually think that combination of Cam Roigard and Beauden Barrett, we haven't seen it a huge amount this year, but it does normally work very well. Beauden, a huge amount of experience up against the Australians and always elusive in that 9 jersey. Cam Roigard, I think that could be the perfect duo to go head-to-head with the Wallabies in this game. Moving on to the midfield combo. Now, with the fact that I've kept Beauden Barrett in that 10 jersey, it meant that I probably needed to make a couple switches here, and that is what I've done. Now, I'm going to be completely honest. The Geordie Barrett, Billy Proctor midfield combo, I think has been one that many have tried to accept as the future, but for now, it's just not quite working. There have been games where Geordie Barrett's been outstanding, And there's been games where Billy Proctor has been solid. But I do think maybe it is time just to have a little bit of a switch, even if it's just for one game. Try and test out something else. Now, they are a bit limited. Timothy Tavatavanawai would have been perfect to fill one of those jerseys, but he did end up picking up a pretty serious injury in the NPC, so he's still out for another 2 months or so. So just bear with me a little bit. Number 12, Quintupaya. Number 13, Rieko Ioane. It's an out there combo. It is a combination that I've never gone with for this video, and maybe it is overthinking that second half up against the South Africans a bit, but I did actually really like Jordie Barrett off the bench in the third test match up against the French in the July internationals, and I feel like playing him in that sort of role in a Bledisloe Cup game could actually be very handy. Now, Quintupaya, he does seem like their second choice in the number 12 jersey, and maybe this would be the perfect game up against the Australians, going head-to-head with either Paisami or Ikitau. I'm not too sure what the injury extent is in that 12 jersey, but maybe just throwing something that little bit different could be exactly what New Zealand need here for the Bledisloe Cup. Rieko Ioane is the 13. That is definitely a curveball, and I know for some people they haven't even got Ioane in their 23. Some don't even have him in their squads. But defensively, I think that the All Blacks do actually need Rieko Ioane for this matchup. Joseph Suali'i has been tearing it up as the outside centre for the Australians. He has scored a lot of tries throughout this Rugby Championship, and what is one thing that Rieko Ioane, even when he gets criticised for his attack, his lack of chasing the ball, his handling errors, what is one thing Ioane can bring you, and that is his defence. Billy Proctor's been solid, but he's missed a few tackles along the way. I feel like for Rieko Ioane, putting him up against someone like a Joseph Suali'i, and I know they haven't used him in the centres for quite some time, but maybe this is the type of game that Ioane can find his confidence again, because he's looking like a wounded sheep. I don't know if that's a saying. Is that a thing? Like a wounded bull? Is it a bull? Why is the bull wounded? Charges like a wounded bull. It's an Australian slang saying. Am I Australian? So Rieko's been looking like a wounded bull that is charging someone because it is wounded. That is what's been happening for Ioane at the moment, and he needs that confidence back. And perhaps up against someone like a Joseph Suali'i, that is either going to be a make or break for Rieko Ioane. I do think they already have a better option. In fact, you could almost argue two better options out on that left wing. So for these games, I honestly think Ioane at 13 is the only way I see him in this All Black side. But moving on to the back three. Number 11, this is where I would play Caleb Clarke. He looks well and truly ready to take on that left wing spot again. Got to play some NPC rugby and has looked extremely strong. Offers you that chase of the high ball, which I think could be extremely crucial for New Zealand here. And if they are going to look for those cross kicks of Beauden Barrett, few up and unders as well, having someone like a Caleb Clarke to chase them could be absolutely vital. Out on the right wing, this is where I would give Leroy Carter that right wing spot. Now, the benefit of him being such a young player in his All Blacks career, he has only got the one cap and he has got a huge amount of versatility. So I don't think it's that different to chuck him out on the right wing. In fact, I believe the Chiefs may have even done that throughout Super Rugby Pacific. But I do think he showed enough throughout that game up against the South Africans. Scored himself a try. Maybe got found out a little bit on defence, but at the end of the day, who doesn't when they're marking up with Chesil and Colby? So I've decided to give him another chance and put him on the right wing for this game. And then number 15, this is where I would go with Will Jordan. I didn't mind McKenzie in that 15 jersey, but I do think he is really strong off the bench at the moment, and Will Jordan does need to be the fullback rather than out on the right wing. So that is why I make that switch here. So the back three, Caleb Clarke, Leroy Carter, and then Will Jordan as that number 15. But that is the starting lineup that I would select. Like I mentioned, a couple curveballs across the side, definitely in that loose forward trio, as well as that centre pairing. This isn't what I think Scott Robertson will go with, but it is something that I think could be quite an effective lineup up against the Australians. But moving on to the bench, I have gone with the 5-3 split. Number 16, Samisoni Taukei'aho, so returning to the bench rather than starting. Number 17, Tamaiti Williams, and number 18, Fletcher Newell. They need to bring that impact later on in a game, and I do think still sticking with those two Crusaders together is a very good idea. The other option you could look at is maybe starting Fletcher Newell and then having Tyrell Lomax partner with Tamaiti Williams off of the bench. But I do think having that extra work rate as well as the extra grunt from Samisoni Taukei'aho kind of shores up that front row a bit for the All Blacks. Number 19, Patrick Tuipulotu. It has been said that he will be available for this matchup. He was out for about 4 weeks. I feel like the absence of no Tuipulotu was felt for New Zealand, but that is also another reason why I can put Fabian Holland back into the starting side, still have Tupavai there as extra lock cover, because with Big Paddy off the bench, it offers you a lot later on in the game. And like I said, this lineup for me is based off how can the All Blacks finish the game stronger to stop that late. Aussie comeback number 20, that is where Wallace Satiti finds himself in my lineup. I do think he is a fantastic option, a tremendous player, and could go into the starting lineup, no worries whatsoever. But I want to see that late injection into the side when other players are starting to get a little bit slower. If Satiti's still got the full gas tank, could be extremely dangerous and at the closing moments. But moving on to my back replacements, another player who is returning from their injury is Cortez Ratama. So he is going straight back in as my number 21 for this game. Number 22, Damian McKenzie, and number 23, Geordie Barrett. So I have got midfield cover. I've got McKenzie there as the fly half or maybe fullback if needed. Will Jordan can pop out to the wing. Ioane can do the same. So I do think that this bench is actually quite nicely balanced in terms of having Damian McKenzie as well as Geordie Barrett. Now, you could also argue that Barrett could go to 15 if really needed, and this is where I would have liked to have someone like a Timothy Tavatava-Nawai. But I do think that Geordie Barrett, because of what he did off the bench up against France, he's still a strong enough player, and I do think a lot of people have gone off him from that second half up against the South Africans while still forgetting what Barrett was able to do beforehand to help New Zealand crucially in a few of their close games. But nonetheless, that is my All Blacks 23 that I would love to see selected for this match at Eden Park. It definitely will not be the team that Scott Robertson names, and that video will be coming out in the near future for me predicting what the All Blacks will be choosing. I am leaving it a little bit later just to make sure injuries aren't too much of a factor for this side moving forward. But if you did enjoy, of course, be sure to leave a like and subscribe, and let me know who you would like to see take to the field up against Australia. It's going to be an epic game of the Bledisloe Cup this weekend. We'll be covering it on the channel. But before that, when the lineup is announced, of course, we'll also have that video as well. But thank you all for watching, and I will see you all for the next one.